that this is the final tour, has that bittersweet thing to it that we would love this to go on forever, but they are going to go out on such a high note if the
Yeah.
early evidence is any indication. So once again, we are here for Nugs.net, which not only brings you every show of this tour in beautiful HD and 4K video, but you can also get downloads of any given show or stream it if you're a subscriber. And Nugs also brings you music by so many other artists: Fish, Bruce Springsteen, Wilco, uh, just about every significant band in the whole jam band world. You can get Goose and Humphreys McGee and so many of your favorites, or maybe favorites to be if you're just starting to explore this stuff. It's a fantastic service. It is the killer app for live music lovers, as we have said several times. And the people who run it are absolutely deep music fans. And that's why Brad Serling started this thing. And he's got a great crew shooting these shows. The visuals are great. The audio coming via Derek Featherstone's mixes is great. And we just hope that you all can explore this and go back through the history of this band. They've been offering Dead and Company from very early on, and you can also go back and get very deep catalogs of other artist shows. David has talked about how you want to hear that Bruce Springsteen Winterland show from 1978 again. It's there, as are the shows that Bruce is playing on his current tour of Europe. Uh, so many artists that you like are available on Nugs.net, and we urge you to try it out.
I also want to compliment whoever's doing the video switching, mixing on this tour. Again, my guests downstairs were remarking on how nicely the video is sort of smoothly dissolving from one musician to another. That's one of the things I love most about this is that it's so musical. I'm one of those people that would hold still and watch the musicians play rather than turn away from the stage and dance. So it's nice to be able to sit here at home and watch the musicians' hands. Jeff Clementi's hands on the keys. I mean, come on.
Right. And that's the crew that's doing this and the people who are directing the video shows. It's no easy task with a band that improvises because you
That's
don't
right.
always know where things are coming from or where the best shot is coming from. A lot of bands, their sets are very, very ordered, and you know that the lights are going to hit the guitar player when he jumps up on the drum riser and all that stuff. This stuff is so unorchestrated in that way. The songs have certain structures that help out, but the crew's doing a great job of it, and course, what you're seeing is the result of tremendous lighting and all of that stuff that Dead and Company's people are doing. So it's a great collaboration, and I think is sort of reaching its peak on this tour.
Well, that said, we should probably get to our pre recorded interview so that we have time to see it before the band returns to the stage in a few minutes.
Right, and it's a big favorite of ours. We've been raving about the good old Grateful Dead cast since its inception, and it just seems to keep getting better. And we should mention we're going to be hearing from Jesse Jarnow. We should also mention Rich Mahan, who is
I was
the
about to say.
well, yeah, we don't want to forget Rich. Rich is the man behind the scenes. Jesse is the voice of it and does an insane amount of that research and everything. But Rich is a co-producer and a co-creator of the Deadcast, and he's really part of the process of pulling it all together. So,
But
Rich, good on you.
not only that, Rich announced today that he's engaged. So, on a personal
Aw.
note, because we're good friends for many years, I'm thrilled for you, brother, and thank you for your fine work on the Deadcast and best of luck in your new life, man.
But enough of the social notes. Let's go on to, and congratulations from me too, Rich. Let's get on to Jesse Jarnow, who always has great stuff to say about this music, and we so enjoy talking to him. So take it away. We will not come back at the end of the break. We will hand it back to the band, as you will be very happy to see. But enjoy. We'll be back on Sunday with Bob Braylove and a lot more
Yeah.
great interviews coming up. So keep watching. And as we said, check out nugs.net. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you. Well, Jesse Jarnow in your WFMU t shirt, host of the Frau Show, author of several very, very cool books, and most importantly for our immediate purposes, the producer and co-host of the good old Grateful Dead cast, which is, to my mind, one of the most important, significant, and deep documents of Grateful Dead history. And I say that as a Grateful Dead historian. Welcome to Dead Air, and thank you for everything you do, sir.
And right back at both of you guys. Thanks for having me back. Hey, Gary, Dave.
Hey, man, great to see you as always. Yeah, if there's anyone out there who hasn't responded to our constant hectoring that you check out the good old Grateful Dead cast, you must do so. It comes out on Thursdays and explores a new aspect of Grateful Dead history every time. Sometimes takes deep dives into entire years or entire tours or entire albums, and it dispels any notions you might have about scholarship being a dry and analytical thing. It is great storytelling. It is great fun. This crusty old deadhead hears things I had never heard before. Archival interviews, some of which are provided by David, contemporaneous interviews from right now, the people remembering the old days, people who weren't there but grew up with the music talking about it, digging out some of the old tapers who are still with us. It's an amazing thing and so much fun to listen to. It's my default, get in the car and drive thing these days.
That I was just going to say that this is the one thing that makes me wish I was touring again is that I missed the long drives, which is when I was able to catch up with the Deadcast. I'm thinking of taking a drive to Bakersfield just so I can listen to the Deadcast.
Aw, shucks. Well, thanks,
Seriously,
guys.
it is amazing work. I don't know even know what the question is to ask. How do you do it? You have just amazingly deep resources. I mean, I know you email me and say, can you get me the audio of this or that? But you must have done like thousands of hours of interviews to get this thing rolling.
Yeah, I mean, this season, one thing that's really helped us actually is that kind of so we're focusing in on 1973. Like Gary said, we do a lot of 50th anniversaries, and one of the things about 1973 is that's when the Grateful Dead paper trail really like blows up. That's the year they started their own record company. Sam Cutler launched out of town tours. They had Frankie Weir's Fly By Night Travel, and the Grateful Dead archives are just like there's just folders and folders and folders of stuff from 1973. Which so for the first time, kind of this season, I've been able to like go through that and sort of find little nuggets in there that kind of send us down other pathways. Like a spoiler for this season that I discovered in a just like a side note in a letter in a file pertaining to the Des Moines show is that Irving Azoff worked for the Grateful Dead for like 2 minutes in 1973. Irving went on to become, infamous manager of the Eagles and some other artists you may have heard of. But apparently, before he took over the Eagles business, moved up to San Francisco for a week, something like that, like 5 days, less than 5 days is sort of how people remember it. And just a culture clash, and this is like a tiny little footnote to a footnote to a footnote, but it's still, it just adds this dimension to that piece of that period of Grateful Dead history that I had never had before. Our mission this season is, ties with the 50th anniversary. There's a new box set that's about to come out that contains 5 amazing shows from the spring of 1973. And every time we do these, Deadcast, each assignment kind of like figures itself out and is sort of like, I really don't want any of them to fall into any kind of like formula. It's like, well, we're doing this, so this happens kind of thing. So I try to really let each one of them kind of guide where we're going. So we let these shows, which are on the new box set, kind of chart our path for this spring and sort of funnel our view of the spring of 1973 through them. And it's just been, a delight. The music is so great. It's these 5 or 4 shows that are 3 sets long, 3 sets long, and one 2-set show. They're all outdoors. It's all big sunshiny music. And then there are all these like threads from the Dead kind of like colliding in different ways at all of them. Like the one that came out today is about the Kezar Stadium show from 73, from May 26, 1973. I know one of you was there who features on this episode. And they're all like, that was the first time the Dead used delay towers, for example. So, one of the things, David, you asked sort of how these things, how they get assembled. One way is that we've been doing interviews now for almost 5 years, and they kind of like pile up. And there are a bunch of services that do this now online where you upload the interviews and they automatically transcribe them, to some degree of accuracy and make them searchable. So we have this database of interviews. And when we get like an assignment, I'll throw some keywords into that and see like, oh, who have we, or do we have anybody telling stories about this one? So like we talked to the Ron and Susan Wickersham a long time ago. And I actually had to figure out the search term because the transcriber calls Kezar. It always spells like keys, Keys, because it's a robot. So finally, I figured out to put keys in. And I'm like, and there's a great Ron Wickersham quote about basically the invention of proto-digital delay towers. Like, this matches up with a bunch of really interesting files that are in the band's archives, where the Alembic sound team was going out to all these different venues and reporting on how so they had a new sound system they had just launched, and Alembic would go out and evaluate the new sound system and how it was working, and then write up letters and send them to the Dead saying, well, this could be improved. And, there's this great detailed letter about Santa Barbara where it's like, there was a wind off the ocean and it blew the sound 600 feet above into the northeast of where we wanted it to go. So we think delay towers to counterbalance that at the next show, would be good. And then there's a follow-up like, oh, and then, Rick Turner and I visited, this is a letter from Ron Wickersham, Rick Turner and I visited Kezar on Monday, and it found it was even windier than Santa Barbara. So this delay tower has to go here. And it's all about, so and we have this story then of Ron Wickersham. It's basically, renting these early delay units from Eventide and then figuring out how to chain them together in a way that's all automatic now. It's like, I'm sure you can like do this from your phone or an iPad or something anywhere in the venue, just like, set delay 0.2 milliseconds from tower, back tower. But there's pages in the archives of math. It's like, what the hell is this?
Which will not be heard on the Deadcast. That sounds pretty damn dry. But just very, very quickly,
it's amazing to see.
The point of delay towers is to match the audio coming off the stage, calculate the distance and the travel time of the audio so that the towers halfway out into the house reinforce and perfectly sync up with the sound coming off the stage. This was used at all these massive shows. It was a heavy thing also later in the year at Watkins Glen.
Right. And not only position them, but angle them, sort of like, and so that's part of the calculations as well. And we also at the RFK show the following week, and they're really like brainstorming these things, and Ron was talking about how, the light crew came to them and said, oh, it's a pain in the butt to kind of like angle the towers themselves. Can you figure? And so that kind of led to the idea of what we would now call virtual modeling, but in that case, in 1973, pages of math to figure out how to approximate like a 0.5 degree tilt on the tower. So we talked to Buddy Thornton this season, he'll be on the next episode out next week about the RFK shows, but he was one of the Allman Brothers sound crew. And he had never seen anything like this before. And he showed up at RFK and he's like, they brought the Allmans, recorded their sets on like a multi-track. And he said, I went out into the field before the show and there was somebody doing math with a slide rule. I had never seen anybody. And he's an aeronautical engineer. That's what he did before he worked for the Allman Brothers as a sound guy. So there was so many little pieces going into all these shows in 73 that it's now kind of like picking those together. It's all of them are kind of little plot points. That's
great.
It's just timeless.
I also figure you must have all of the books. I will get an email from you once a month or so saying
could you send me this paragraph from page 27 of Conversations with the Dead? I figure you must have more post-its than pages in every one of these damn books because you're looking for these quotes and stuff. I love being part of it, and I really enjoy the process of digging through my old audio interviews to find that 15 seconds you're looking for. It's
Well, listen,
really,
here
really
you can
fun.
see my dead bookshelf just behind me right there.
Yep.
But text searchable books also make things make things easier. The same way that the text searchable audio does.
Yeah, finding articles by not having to go to the library and get microfilm and wind it on a machine and all that, because I've had to do that in my time. But
there's
the
still
thi-
a
the
few
thing-
that I have to reference from old Xeroxes.
Oh,
even.
sure.
It's,
Sure.
yeah. Anyway.
But the things we're talking about here just indicate what an amazing year 1973 was in the Dead on every conceivable front. What they were doing with the sound system was the ascending amount of work that would later manifest in the Wall of Sound. Leaving Warner Brothers, starting their own record company. The work heard on this new box set includes the songs to be included on Wake of the Flood, which were maturing over that summer.
Yeah.
And yeah, the band took on this amazing quixotic thing, which in some ways was a folly, running their own business. There was that big article in Rolling Stone that year about
Welcome to the wide open world of the new corporate Grateful Dead.
right with the great Robert Grossman cover of Garcia. But it was an incredible creative time for the band, as well as their little corporate rebellion being mounted.
Right.
So,
and that theme of the corporate or the anti-corporate rebellion, however you want to frame it, is it's still to me such an inspiring thing. It's always a good time to kind of try to be independent and go against the grain of mainstream media and do your own thing. And the idea that the Dead could do that, could really start their own record company, right down to getting the stuff manufactured. They had their own publishing company. To me, it's just amazing. Corporate media is even more entrenched now, in terms of streaming services, just in terms of music consolidation, ticket consolidation, all these things. So the idea that they could, even try to fight City Hall is kind of, to me, it really is just awe-inspiring. It's ridiculous, and it's understandable that it can be seen now as sort of a folly, but it's it's so it's virtuous in a wonderful way.
It's seen as folly, but also seen as visionary and very influential. I mean, even someone as huge and powerful as the Beatles, they had this vision of their own little empire, but they did Apple all within the realm of EMI. Yeah. The Dead did everything down to the distribution and the pressing plants, as you said. And a lot of people to this day credit them as pretty much the inventors of the artist-owned indie label. From the people at SST Records to people like Vernon Reid and the Black Rock Coalition, they have all cited the Grateful Dead as the people who took the chance, the people who staked out that frontier.
Right. And one of the things that I, again, seen in the archives is how they saw all of this as an extension of their questing. That's literally the word that's used in the business papers. There's this amazing report that's in the archives from Alan Trist, who ran Ice Nine Publishing, tight with Garcia and Hunter, back to the early days. And he was kind of, the Dead were a rock band. They were, they developed sound, but they were also kind of a think tank. And Alan was, and Alan and Hunter are kind of like, and people like John McIntyre are sort of, a think tank in that way. So they do these papers. And one of the things that Alan talks about, and this report about what are we going to do now that our Warner Brothers contract is up. And it's well, we can re-sign, we could do this, and it weighs out all the options. And one of the factors in there is the questing factor. It's how adventurous are we going to be? And it's a real part of their business decisions. And you can see all of these things as just an extension of the music and the bigger thing that they were doing, the bigger project of being the Grateful Dead. It's all on the same, it's all right there, one flowing into the other.
You mentioned a key word. You said music, and I want to bring this back to the subject of music.
Please.
And I mean, 73 is an important year for all the reasons we've just been discussing, but it's also important that the Grateful Dead were at this peak of their collective consciousness as a band. And they had an amazing year in 1972, which was the year that got me on board. It made a lifer out of me the first time I saw them. But 73, at the beginning of the year, they introduced half a dozen new songs that expanded their universe, Eyes of the World being one of them, and Here Comes Sunshine. They expand every new song in those days, sort of expanded the Grateful Dead's musical universe and opened them up into new areas. So 73 was this year of exploring all this wonderful stuff. And I love the sort of relaxed, unhurried nature of all those shows. They go on, like you said, there's some of these 3-set shows in here, and they just were in no hurry to go anywhere. And there was all this space between the notes. It's just amazing music, and I could listen to 73 for the rest of my days.
So one of the really powerful things about talking to people about these shows. So one of the goals of doing a show about an episode about Kezar or an episode about the Santa Barbara show the week before is to sort of channel a little bit of what it felt like to be at the show from the experience of people who were there, both working the show, like behind the stage, but people who attended the show. What was it like to be a Dead freak in 1973? So many of the people that we've talked to about these shows, their memories of the shows are these new songs, and they're new songs that aren't out yet. They're not like, it's not like they spent a bunch of time at home listening to the song on a record and having it kind of like burned into their brain and then went to the show and it's like, oh, they played this great song that I already love. It's going to the show and having like this first powerful exposure to something brand new and that will be part of your life for many, many years. And the first impression of it is in this situation. I know you had that experience, David.
I did. I think that's one of the most amazing things about the Grateful Dead, and another one of the ways that they bucked the normal way of the music business. The rest of the music business would perfect the song in the studio, put out the record, and then go tour the songs. They taught us to appreciate novelty, to expect and hope for novelty, and to be thrilled at hearing a new song rather than being dismayed by it. Like, what is this? So that's another one of the things the Dead did. And I did an expanded version of playing in the band after Jerry died. And one of my favorite, I asked a bunch of questions of a bunch of different people. And Blair Jackson gave me one of my favorite answers. He said, I grew up wanting to see the same movie a bunch of times and stuff like that. I stuck with my familiar things, but the Grateful Dead taught me to appreciate novelty, to go in there. I never do the same thing twice now. I want a new experience every time. And I thought that was a really nice, one of the things the Dead did for us was teach us to live in the moment and appreciate novelty and not expect to be comforted.
Yeah, exactly. And an interesting thing to me about this box set is, in those days, the set lists were certainly different every show. It's not like they were, playing off the same piece of paper every time, but a lot of the material, the songs are the same. There's a lot of songs that are on all 4 shows or even all 5 shows that are on this box set. But that does it for me. That's not at all a drawback. It's like, sure, 5 versions of Eyes of the World, bring it on, from
Exactly so,
or but
yeah.
even however many versions of They Love Each Other or on there. They're all, there's obviously the solos are different, but there's just the mood is just slightly different. The recordings are certainly different. You get different perspectives, and it's just, they're great every time. It's true.
The players are learning new ways with every performance of dropping in new little bits of ornamentation or stripping away some ornamentation. Knowing what to leave out in a song has always been a Grateful Dead hallmark. And for me, one of the signature things in 1973 was the Weather Report Suite, and I've recently come to realize that was the launching of a vision that Bob Weir had that he's just now fulfilling with Wolf Bros and the Wolf Pack. Bobby told me.
I hate to interrupt you, but we are out of time.
Oh, shit.
What? Time?
What
is
21
time?
minutes into this 20-minute interview, I hate to say.
Well, damn it. Jesse. Let's forbid the band from going back on stage. We are hijacking the rest of the show. No, I guess we can't do that.
No, but maybe we could talk to you again before the end of the tour. Let's see if we
Yeah.
can work that out.
Or of course
I could do this for days.
have the more expansive terrain of Tales from the Golden Road to work with, of course, as always. I just want to say, in the interest of conceptual continuity, my backdrop today is a Courtney Pollock.
Oh, very nice.
Who tie-dyes adorned the Grateful Dead's amp covers in those days and the giant backdrops they had behind them at shows.
And went on to work for Grateful Dead Records as a radio promo guy in 73, 74. You know,
There
just
you
the way
go.
the Dead family, just that's all these people melting right from one job into the next. It's
All
great.
right. I'm so very, very sorry to say that we have to stop this now and go. Well, I mean, I'm glad we get to go back to the Dead and Company show, but I'm sorry we have to stop talking with Jesse. This has been really fun. Let's get you onto Tales and we can spend the whole 2 hours.
Hell yeah.
Good to see you, man.
Totally. Oh man, I could really do this forever.